All right, here at halftime, we are joined by Scottie Bordelon from Whole Hog Sports and Hogs Illustrated. Pinch hitting today for Bob Holt, Scottie. So you ready to take some swings? Because pinch hitters are not supposed to stand there and just take pitches. You know how this works.
Yeah, man, I'm not going to stand in the box. Let's do this thing.
All right, very
Love
good.
the confidence.
Well, then the first pitch is coming to you. We were talking in the last segment about this list that Brad Crawford from 24/7 Sports put together about intimidating atmospheres in college football. He's got Reynolds Razorback Stadium ranked 9th on the list. Now, I don't know if he said this is just the experiences that he's had personally. I think you got to be inside the stadium to know what makes it intimidating rather than just on television. So as someone who has covered games inside Razorback Stadium for a while now, what do you think stands out about the atmosphere there that it belongs on this list of most intimidating stadiums in college football?
I think you probably have to start, like, it's probably going to sound like a canned answer, but, like, probably just, like, the passion of the fan base. I mean, you walk around the stadium and you see all people, tailgating all day for a night game, and, they're not out there drinking water and Coke, and then they get into the stadium, and then, they're crazy about Arkansas football. I think you got pretty good tailgate scene going on outside, and then, there's a lot of anticipation and build up for a game. And I think when the football team is good, you obviously you get a packed stadium, the students get involved. I think the students I think they kind of go a long way in kind of creating the energy in the stadium. And I think when the students are interested and they're loud and they're rowdy, I think that kind of bleeds, through the rest of the stadium from top to bottom. But, I mean, night game in Razorback Stadium when the team is really good. Like, I remember when I was in college, Auburn came to Arkansas the year after they won the national championship, and that was about as rowdy and loud as I've heard it. And I remember it was a lot. I felt like it was pretty similar to that kind of environment, last year when Arkansas played Texas. I mean, it's not an easy place to play, especially when the team is good. And that gives, fans something to cheer about and, get loud and rowdy about.
What about, and really, I mean, when you look at the other atmospheres for the Razorback athletics, and Bud Walton, when men's basketball is sold out, when women's basketball is a good crowd, and baseball, that place speaks for itself, for Bogle Park, really, too. And I wonder if just the call of the Hogs has anything to do with it, because it is every school's got their own cheers and things like that. But the Hog Call is pretty unique. When you drop a well-timed woo pig suey Razorbacks with like 20,000 people at a basketball game, or 12,000 at baseball, or 78,000 at football, and exactly when you're supposed to do it, and it's at the moment where the opponent is probably a little bit ready to be intimidated. That's when they're down or called a timeout or making a pitching change or just gave up a touchdown. Like, I feel like the Hog Call's got to be a reason why too.
Yeah, I would think you're right for sure. I go back to in your case, like with baseball, Arkansas hits a home run, for example, pitching coach goes out and talks to the pitcher, try to make sure that things don't unravel. I feel like that Hog Call is a great compliment to whatever action just happened on the field that, maybe applied some pressure to whoever's playing there. And then maybe that Hog Call, adds, maybe a little bit, another wave of that pressure, maybe a little bit of intimidation too. I mean, I'm surprised almost like every year. I don't know why exactly, but people from out of the state that maybe haven't traveled to Arkansas, don't particularly know just a ton about Arkansas. That Hog Call, it does catch them by surprise, and they kind of wonder what exactly is going on. But you get a bunch of people in Razorback Stadium or in Bud Walton Arena calling the Hogs. Like when Arkansas might go on an 8-0, 10-0 run that puts a little bit of a real game pressure on a team. When you hear that going on, you call a timeout, and that's the only thing you can hear in an opposing team's huddle. That's it's got to be pretty tough. I would imagine it's definitely rattles some players.
Now, Scottie, you're talking about intimidation and loud environments at Razorback Stadium. Let's just look at this year's schedule. I mean, which one do you think is going to have the biggest fan turnout? I mean, largest crowd and kind of the most hypest crowd? Is it just looking at the schedule and just saying, all right, it's obviously going to be Alabama, or could it be, maybe Ole Miss, LSU later in the year?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think there's going to be several good crowds throughout the year. I'm just looking. It's interesting. You mentioned the schedule. I'm looking at it right now, and outside of like maybe Missouri State, the first 3 weeks of the schedule before Arkansas goes to A&M, it's not like your traditional. You're bringing in Northern Illinois or Western Illinois or some directional school from the north. I mean, it's Cincinnati. Like that's a pretty good named program. Like they were just in the playoff. I wouldn't be surprised. The way that the program's been building, in a pretty positive trajectory really quick in Pittman's first couple of years. Like that first game, I think's got the potential to be pretty good. And then week 2, I think a lot of people aren't completely. I just don't think they like per se maybe the persona of Spencer Rattler, and so maybe that'll add a little bit of fire to the flame too. But then when Bobby Petrino comes with Missouri State, that's going to be pretty electric too. I think it won't be probably a very good game, but the build up to it will be interesting, especially maybe early in that game. There's going to be maybe some raw emotions coming out from a few of the fans, but just looking at the rest of the schedule, Alabama's going to be pretty good. Liberty, maybe not so much, but I think that 2 week stretch where you got LSU and Ole Miss coming in late November, when the games are really big and maybe you're fighting for maybe better positioning in terms of bowl games and that kind of thing. If you're in that spot, that point of the year, that's going to be a really, really good stretch. I remember back when, what was it, 2014 or 20? I think it was 2014 when Arkansas had LSU and Ole Miss come in during that stretch when. I think Arkansas snapped its long SEC losing streak and then beat Ole Miss pretty good. Like those are two pretty good teams coming in. Arkansas fans don't really care for either one of those programs at all. So those 2 games would probably, for me, that'll probably be the best. I would say probably 2 week stretch of the year.
On the flip side of that, not a very intimidating road schedule for Arkansas this year. I mean, obviously you got the neutral against A&M and Jerry World. You're not really scared about playing in front of a raucous crowd in Provo because, one, they don't drink. How raucous can you really get sober? So, I mean, it just kind of pretty much leaves, I guess, State would be the most intimidating place that Arkansas is going to have to play. Have you ever been to a game in Starkville and heard those cowbells in their full action and loudness?
No, I've never been to Mississippi State, but the cowbells are plenty annoying just watching on TV. But that Mississippi State game, I'm talking about interesting stretches. That's the first game in a 3-game stretch over 4 weeks where you're playing every game on the road. And then you cap that off at Auburn, which, even when Auburn's kind of a middling team in the league, Arkansas and Auburn tend to play pretty competitive games. Like even in Sam's first year, like I don't know that I necessarily expected Arkansas to go in there and be competitive, but they were. Probably should have won that game. But Auburn, even when they're decent to solid, like that can be a pretty tough place to play. At BYU, I get what you're saying probably about the tailgating thing's probably not going to be real electric there. But I just think that road trip's just going to be tough, just a little bit because of the travel and probably some of the elevation, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Scottie, I'm going to just, to wrap up here, just change sports on you for a moment. And there's a little interesting bit of, I guess you could say it's news, from the Dave Van Horn press conference that's still happening right now. And he was asked about Wes Johnson taking the LSU pitching coach job from Minnesota Twins. And this is a quote from Dave Van Horn. Quote, Wes had the chance to go down there last year, too, after my coach turned them down. So, and I didn't realize this. I don't know who did. This seems like news to me that Matt Hobbs turned down LSU last year to stay at Arkansas. I like this.
Yeah, that is pretty interesting. I think Matt's done a good job with the pitching staff. And you guys probably know, and Phil, you're probably a little bit ashamed of me, but I don't keep up with baseball that much. But I liked what he did, with the guys in the postseason. Like Zach Morris was a guy that you could really count on out of the bullpen. Evan Taylor too. I loved watching Evan Taylor pitch. Something about a guy that throws kind of 3/4 from the left side and just throwing sliders down and away to lefties. I really like what he did with the pitching staff. It's not really surprising that other SEC programs maybe trying to get a boost with their arms or looking at a guy like Matt Hobbs and the track record that he's built at Arkansas. So it is interesting. I didn't know that either, but it's interesting to see Wes Johnson make the move he did, and I think Matt Hobbs you probably know better than anybody else. I think he's probably pretty happy with where he is.
I think it's pretty obvious. He's turned down major league teams. He's turned down LSU. I think he likes to be at Arkansas. Last thought, and it's about basketball. And I was talking about baseball and fall ball coming up. I think that's going to be incredibly interesting to watch because of all the open jobs at nearly every position outside of maybe second base and maybe DH or first base. Like, there's tons of open jobs for baseball. Can you imagine, and I said this last year going into the basketball season, and I feel like on a year-by-year basis because of what you have to replace and replenish year by year, whether through guys exhausting their eligibility or your one-and-dones like you got from Moses, and you might have 2 one-and-dones this next year. And with the talent that's in here, and every account seems to be that this might be the most talented group Muss has, like the October practices... Come on. These are going to be legendary.
Better than November games.
Better than the games, no doubt.
Yeah, I'm glad that Eric has decided to, clip some of the highlights from practice and kind of give us some insight as to what's going on. And it seems like, I saw a clip of Trevor in Brazil, putting back the dunk with 2 hands after grabbing it with his left. I think when that shot went up, he started, close to the 3-point line. If he wasn't behind it, finished that. I think it's really interesting that, Eric was talking, so he spoke really highly of Trevin last year a couple of times when he was at Missouri. He's getting to be pretty hands-on with him. I think that he thinks so much of Trevin, and I think that he's going to be a guy that starts and shines on this team. But yeah, like right now, I think the summer workouts are where you're trying to make your first impressions on the staff, and just you're working on a lot of skill development and team chemistry and bonding and stuff. Like they do some kind of a team outing every Friday when they're all together. But when you start getting into August, September, October, those workouts and practices are going to be pretty intense because every single one of those guys believes that they should be on the floor. Obviously, you can't put them all on the floor. And, given Eric's track record, I looked up not too long ago that I believe in 70 or 71 of his 101 games, he's played fewer than 10 guys in a game. And, he's got, 11, 12, 13 guys that you probably feel like in some capacity could impact winning or influence a game in some way. So there's going to be there might be some guys that are not exactly happy with their playing time, but that playing time's earned, behind closed doors when we don't get to watch everything. Obviously some guys can obviously get in games and take advantage of opportunities, but I do think this is a super talented team. The last time I looked at an ESPN mock draft, Nick Smith I think he was projected to go 3rd to Orlando.
Jeez.
So you got that too. And then, I think guys like, Jordan Walsh and Anthony Black, I think those guys can work their way into some of those mock drafts too. Maybe a guy like Trevor in Brazil. I really think that he's got really stellar potential. He's so young too. Like Eric spoke so highly of him. He was just a freshman last year. He was still, trying to figure out a place that he could, try to do what he could on a bad team. Put some, more talented pieces around him. Maybe he's a guy that can really flourish. But I'm really excited and eager to just learn more and more about this team. And I know a lot of people are looking forward to football, but once football gets there, that means basketball's starting to ramp up too. So it's going to be interesting to learn more about this group.
Yeah, we might learn more about them when they go to Europe. Appreciate you, Scottie. Thanks for stepping in on short notice. Thank you so much.
Partners at BetOnline continue to be the number one source for all your betting needs and sports info. Find all the latest odds, news, and sports developments, including this year's Wimbledon Finals, Major League Baseball, the latest fighting news, and even next season's early NFL futures. Head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use our promo code BLEAV. That's BLEAV to get the bonus and get into the action. Bet online, where the game starts.